I discovered my wife's affair with her boss and hidden finances, leading to a painful confrontation and my decision to fight for full custody of our kids. Hey there! Welcome to today's story. What's going on in your world right now? Whatever you're up to, I hope you're ready to join me on this journey. Today, we're diving into a story where the main character is about to face some tough truths. Truths that might feel all too real for some of us. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where everything you thought you knew was turned upside down? Stay with me through the twists and turns of this one, and see how the character deals with it all. If you like what you hear, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep bringing you more stories like this. Thanks for being here, and let's get started. It was a typical Monday morning, or so I thought. The clock on the wall read 8:45 a.m. when I kissed my wife, Julia, goodbye. Julia and I had been married for over 15 years. She was smart, successful, and the kind of woman most people would envy. A real estate agent who had made a name for herself in the industry, always dressed impeccably, always carrying that air of confidence. I had been proud of her. We were a power couple in the eyes of many. But as I kissed her that morning, something about her smile felt off. It wasn't her usual warmth. It was almost like she was hiding something. I dismissed it. Maybe I was just overthinking it, as I often did. I gathered my things, kissed our 2 kids goodbye, and headed to work. Little did I know, that was the last time I would kiss her in innocence. My mind was preoccupied with the endless reports waiting for me at the office. The stress of deadlines had already begun to weigh on me. But things quickly took a dark turn that day. Around 10 a.m., I was in the break room, grabbing some coffee when a sharp pain shot through me, right in my abdomen, the kind of pain that makes you freeze in place, unable to breathe. I couldn't help but shout in agony, drawing the attention of my colleague, James. He rushed over to help, asking if I was okay. I barely managed to shake my head. Go to the clinic. Get checked out, James advised, his concern palpable. Couldn't argue. I grabbed my briefcase and headed to the nearest urgent care clinic. I figured it was just some random stomach bug. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. As the nurse took my blood pressure and asked a series of questions, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease gnawing at me. Then came the news that shattered everything. The doctor came in and delivered it bluntly. Gonorrhea. My mind reeled. How? I had only been with one person in my life, Julia. As the doctor explained that it could have been misdiagnosed as something else, I felt my heart sink. There was only one logical explanation. Julia. I was numb, stunned. My entire world felt like it had been shattered into a million pieces. Couldn't wrap my head around it. Julia, the woman I had built my life around, the woman who had been my everything for over a decade, was the one who had betrayed me. I had always believed that nothing could tear us apart. But the truth was staring me right in the face, and it was ugly. I couldn't stop shaking. My hands trembled as I hung up the phone with Robert, my boss. He had expressed his sympathy, telling me to take as much time as I needed to process everything. But honestly, I didn't want to sit around. I couldn't just sit still while this nightmare unraveled. My mind raced. Questions bounced around in my head, none of them making sense. How could I have been so blind? How had I missed the signs? I needed to know. I needed to see everything for myself, to understand just how deep this betrayal went. I couldn't just trust anyone else's version of events. I had to uncover the truth with my own hands. That evening, I found myself at home, sitting in our living room, the silence in the house deafening. The kids were at a neighbor's, a playdate they had arranged earlier in the day, and I was left alone. The couch felt cold beneath me. The soft cushions that Julia and I had spent countless hours lounging on suddenly feeling foreign. I glanced around, half expecting Julia to walk in, but the space felt emptier than ever before. The very air in the room felt heavy, as though it was suffocating me. I needed a distraction. My eyes landed on the stack of unopened mail on the coffee table. It wasn't much, just the usual bills, ads, and a few letters from the kids' school. But it wasn't the mail that I was interested in. My gaze shifted to the pile of financial documents in the corner of the room. It was then that I made my decision. I would look through the bank statements. Julia had always been the one who managed the finances, and I never thought to question her. But now, everything felt like a lie, and if I was going to understand the full scope of what had happened, I had to know where the money had gone. The first few statements were from our joint account, the one we used for everything: mortgage, bills, groceries, kids' expenses. As I flipped through them, everything seemed normal. Then I came across an unexpected transaction. A transfer of a large sum of money from our joint account into her personal account. At first, I thought it was just a mistake. Maybe it was an automatic transfer, or she'd just been moving some money around for budgeting. But when I looked closer, I realized there were more of them, several transfers, all made over the last 6 months. Each one larger than the last. My stomach churned. My throat tightened. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. She had been hiding money from me. Money that should have been ours. I didn't want to believe it. Maybe it was an emergency fund she'd set up without telling me. But then why not tell me? Why wasn't I part of this? The fear started to claw at me, deep in my chest. I tried to calm myself, to breathe through it, but everything felt too raw, too real. I kept flipping through the papers, desperate to find an explanation. And that's when I saw it. Folder. It wasn't something I had noticed before, but now it stood out like a flashing red light. A folder, tucked under a stack of receipts, labeled simply savings. I pulled it out, hands shaking, and opened it slowly. Inside were more bank statements, but these weren't from our account. They were from a bank I didn't recognize. My pulse quickened as I scanned the documents. The more I read, the worse it got. Julia had been saving a small fortune over the years. Money that I had no idea about. She'd hidden it all in a separate account, one I had never known existed. She had saved enough to completely separate herself financially from me, and I hadn't even noticed. I had always trusted her, and now I felt like a fool. It wasn't just the affair anymore. The betrayal wasn't limited to the affair itself. It was everything: the lies, the manipulation, the deceit. I had been living with a stranger, someone who had been playing a game with me, pretending to be the loving wife, the devoted mother, the partner I had trusted with every fiber of my being. I kept reading the bank statements, my mind spinning. Every number, every deposit, felt like a blow to my gut. She had been preparing for this, for some sort of escape. A part of me wanted to scream, to throw the papers across the room and let my anger explode. But I couldn't. I was too numb, too heartbroken. She had always been so careful, so meticulous. She had planned this carefully, layer by layer, over the years, and I had been none the wiser. There were even records of large withdrawals, money that had been used for what? Gifts? Trips? Or worse, a new life with Derek? I slammed the folder shut, my hands trembling. I felt like I was losing control, like everything I thought I knew about my life had been ripped away in an instant. I had trusted her more than anyone in my life, and now all of it seemed like a lie. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, but there was something else too, something deeper, a profound sadness, the kind of grief that sank into your bones and made you question everything. For hours, I sat there trying to process it all. I was consumed by the weight of what I had just discovered, and yet I knew I had to do something about it. I couldn't just let this go. I couldn't just keep living in this false reality. I had to face her. I had to make her admit what she had done. But how could I even begin to confront her with this? How do you confront the woman you thought you knew? The woman you had built a life with the knowledge that she had been lying to you all along? I didn't know the answer, but I knew I couldn't stay silent. Not anymore. The next day, I confronted Julia. It wasn't a conversation I had meticulously planned in my head. It wasn't rehearsed or carefully constructed. It wasn't even a choice I had made consciously. It was a gut reaction, a raw impulse that surged through me like a tidal wave. The hours since I had discovered the truth felt like they had stretched into days. I had spent the night pacing, unable to sleep, unable to think clearly. I felt betrayed, but more than that, I felt like a fool. I had been living with a stranger. I needed to hear the truth from her lips. I needed Julia to explain it all, the affair, the money, the lies. I wanted her to admit what she had done, to break the silence and tell me how long this had been going on. When I finally found her, she was sitting in the kitchen, staring blankly at the cup of tea in front of her, her hands frozen around the porcelain handle. Her face looked so tired, so devoid of life, almost as if she knew this moment would come. I didn't give her a chance to speak. I wasn't sure I could even stand the sound of her voice right now. "Julia," I started, my voice steady but filled with disbelief. "I know everything. I know about Derek. I know about the money. I know what you've been hiding from me. All this time, you've been living a double life, haven't you?" She flinched at the sound of Derek's name. Her eyes darted down to the table, avoiding my gaze, as if she could escape this conversation by simply refusing to meet my eyes. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I held myself back. I was done with anger for the moment. I needed the truth. She didn't fight back. She didn't even deny it. She just sat there, pale as a ghost, her hands trembling slightly as they rested on the table. Her breathing was shallow, and I could see the faintest tremor in her lips, but she still refused to look at me directly. After what felt like an eternity of silence, she finally spoke. "I'm sorry," she said, the words slipping out in a quiet, almost apologetic tone. But those words felt hollow. They hung in the air like a bad smell, empty and insincere. I had been waiting for this moment, for her to finally admit what she had done. But hearing her say sorry didn't feel like an apology. It felt like a last-ditch effort to ease her conscience, to make me believe that her regrets were genuine. "I never meant for you to find out this way," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's just that I didn't know how to keep pretending anymore." Pretending. That word hit me like a punch in the gut. Pretending. For years, I had believed that the woman sitting across from me was the one I had married, the one who had given me 2 beautiful children, the one who promised me forever. But now, all I could see was a stranger in her place. Everything about our life together, all the memories, the moments I thought were real, suddenly seemed tainted. I had been living a lie. The betrayal stung. But what hit me harder was the realization that the person I had trusted most in the world had been playing a part in my life, hiding who she really was. All those years of laughter, of intimacy, of shared dreams. None of it had been real. She had been pretending. She had been pretending to be the perfect wife, the devoted mother, the woman who stood by my side in everything. But behind all of that, she had been planning her escape. Julia admitted, almost in passing, that she had been seeing Derek for months. It wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown relationship. I had always suspected that something was off about their dynamic at work. The way she spoke about him, the late nights, the constant business trips that seemed to have no real purpose. But to hear her finally admit it, out loud, in front of me, was like a knife through my heart. And then, as if that wasn't enough, she told me something that crushed me entirely. "I've been planning to leave for years," she said, her voice flat, as though she had already resigned herself to it. "You're a good father, Greg, and I've always respected you. But I've been saving money, building an escape fund, like I called it. I couldn't just leave with nothing. So, I started putting away extra from my commissions, from everything I could manage. I didn't want to hurt you, but I knew it was inevitable. When the kids were old enough, I planned to leave." I sat there in complete disbelief. I had always prided myself on being a good husband, on being present for her and the kids. And now, I was faced with the cold reality that Julia had been planning her departure for years, long before I ever suspected a thing. Every anniversary, every family holiday, every intimate conversation we had shared, it had all been a part of her act, her performance to keep me in the dark while she meticulously prepared to leave. Her escape fund wasn't just for some future goal. It was a lifeline, a plan to escape from me when the time was right. She had built a secret financial cushion, a buffer to ensure that she could walk away without consequences. I was crushed, but what hurt the most was that she had been living a double life. She had been pretending to be everything I thought I needed her to be. The perfect wife, the perfect mother, while secretly making plans to abandon everything we had built together. Couldn't wrap my mind around it. The life we had, the family we had raised, was it all just a lie? How long had she been planning this? How much of our time together was genuine, and how much of it was part of her carefully constructed charade? I wanted to scream at her, to demand answers, but I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at the woman I thought I knew. The tears started to well up, and I struggled to keep them from falling, not wanting her to see how deeply this hurt me. But I couldn't hold back the flood of emotions anymore. I had loved her, trusted her with everything I had, and now it all seemed like it had been a mistake. Julia looked up at me then, her eyes filled with what I thought was remorse. But in her gaze, I saw something else: relief. She didn't feel guilt. She didn't feel bad for what she had done. No, she felt relieved that the truth was out, and perhaps now she could finally move on. I felt a chill run down my spine. I had thought I knew her, but now I saw the cracks in the facade. I had been living with a woman who had been plotting her escape, while I was blindly walking through life, believing we had it all. But the worst part was that I had trusted her with everything. My love, my life, my future, and she had thrown it all away without a second thought. Knock knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story, but before that, make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. The decision was clear: divorce. I couldn't continue living this lie any longer. The foundation of my life had been shattered, and while I still loved her in some part of my heart, the trust was gone. How could I look at Julia and not see the woman who had been deceiving me for years? I couldn't look away from the truth now, no matter how much it hurt. But I wasn't going to make it easy for her. Not after everything I'd learned. I knew I had to get everything in order, not just for me, but for our children. Mia and Max needed me more than ever, and I had to do this for them. It wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about taking control of my life, of their lives, of our future. There was so much to think about, so much to untangle. The finances, the custody, everything that I had thought was solid, everything I had worked for, was now a fragile house of cards. But I wasn't about to let everything crumble. I was going to rebuild. I made an appointment with Rita Anderson, a lawyer I trusted. Rita had always been known for her no-nonsense approach, and I needed someone like her by my side. She wasn't going to sugarcoat things for me, and I appreciated that. I walked into her office feeling like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, but at least now I had someone who could help me navigate the mess. "I'm sorry you're going through this," Rita said, offering a sympathetic but professional smile. "But let's get down to business." I laid it all out. The affair, the lies, the money Julia had been hiding. I told her everything. Rita listened carefully, taking notes, her eyes never leaving me as I spoke. When I finished, she paused for a moment, collecting her thoughts. "You've got a strong case for divorce," Rita said, her voice calm but firm. "Adultery is grounds for divorce, and the financial manipulation. That's huge. You're entitled to half of what she's hidden, and that's just the beginning. We'll go after everything, Greg." Her words were a mix of relief and cold reality. The divorce wasn't just a personal betrayal anymore. It was a financial war, and I was ready to fight. Rita assured me that I'd be entitled to a significant portion of our assets, but more importantly, she understood the emotional toll it had taken on me. This wasn't just about the money. It was about protecting my children, ensuring they wouldn't be caught in the crossfire of Julia's actions. "Do you want me to start drafting the papers?" Rita asked. I nodded, my throat tight. "Yes, but I need to figure out the custody situation first. Julia might fight me on this." Rita's expression softened, and she leaned back in her chair. "I understand. Custody battles are never easy, but I'll help you with that. You've been the one there for the kids every day, especially after Julia started working those longer hours. You've got a good case." I sat there, staring at the table, processing everything she said. The fight ahead was going to be long and difficult. I knew Julia would put up a fight, but I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not when it came to the kids. Mia and Max were my responsibility. I had always been there for them, through the late-night school projects, the early morning soccer practices, and every little milestone that they reached. Julia had been there physically, but I knew she hadn't been present. She had been too wrapped up in her career, too distant to be the mother they needed. This was where my priorities had shifted. I had to fight for them. If I was going to walk away from this marriage, I wasn't just walking away from Julia. I was walking toward my children's future. They needed stability, and I was the one who could provide that for them. As Rita began preparing the divorce papers, I focused on what mattered most. Mia and Max. They were still too young to fully understand what was happening, but I knew they felt the tension. They had seen the distance between their mother and me. I had to make sure they didn't feel abandoned by both of us. I had to be their rock. But the reality of the situation hit me harder than I expected. As I sat in Rita's office, we began to discuss custody arrangements. I realized how much was at stake. Not just for me, but for them. Julia might fight me for custody. She might try to paint me as the unfit parent. But I wasn't going to let her. I knew my role. I was the one who had put in the hours, the effort, the love. I was the one who had been there for every tear, every laugh, every moment that counted. "Greg," Rita said, snapping me out of my thoughts, "you're going to need to gather all the evidence you can. Anything that shows you've been the primary caregiver. Emails, texts, receipts for school activities. Anything that shows you've been the one holding things together. If you want to fight for full custody, we need to show the judge that you've been the one who's always been there for them." I agreed, the gravity of the situation sinking in deeper. It wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about securing my children's future, making sure they grew up in a home where they felt safe and loved. I couldn't allow Julia's actions to dictate their lives, to tear apart the family we had built. "I'll do whatever it takes," I said, my voice steady with determination. "They're my priority now." Rita nodded, her tone serious. "I know you will. We'll get this done. But you need to be prepared for the long haul. Custody battles are hard. They take time, patience, and strategy." I left her office with a sense of purpose that had been absent for weeks. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was no longer a passive player in my own life. I was taking control. The divorce wasn't just a legal battle. It was a fight for my children's future, for the stability and love they deserved. And I was ready to do whatever it took to win that fight. Later that evening, I found myself at home, sitting on the couch with Mia and Max, who had come home from their day at school. Their faces were the same, bright, innocent, unaware of the storm that was brewing. But I saw them differently now. They were my anchor. They were my reason for everything. "Dad?" Mia asked, looking up at me with wide, curious eyes. "What's going to happen now?" I looked at her, and for the first time in days, I smiled. "We're going to be okay, Mia. You and Max, you're going to be okay. I'm going to make sure of it." The divorce was final. I had signed the papers, and it was done. A sense of relief washed over me, but it wasn't the overwhelming feeling I had expected. I had imagined that once the legalities were over, I would feel liberated, free from the weight of betrayal. Instead, there was a quiet emptiness that settled deep inside me. The emotional toll of the past few months had been so heavy, so intense, that the finality of the divorce felt almost anticlimactic. The relief was there, but it was tinged with a sadness I hadn't anticipated. As I sat in the silence of our old home, our home, now stripped of its warmth, its energy, I realized how much I had been holding on to. The walls were the same, the furniture untouched, but everything had changed. The echoes of laughter and conversation had faded, and in their place, there was a thick stillness. I couldn't help but wonder how things had gone so wrong. How had I not seen it coming? But life, as it always does, moved forward. I couldn't linger in the past forever. Mia and Max were my everything. They were the reason I had to keep going. The reason I couldn't let the darkness swallow me whole. The decision to be the best father I could be became my lifeline. I had to make sure that their world was as stable as I could possibly make it. They deserved that. They deserved to feel safe, to feel loved, and to have the emotional support they needed after everything they had gone through. I started attending every school event, every soccer game. I sat on the sidelines, cheering them on with a pride that had never felt more genuine. Watching them grow, seeing their smiles, hearing their laughter. It reminded me that there was still so much good in the world, so much hope. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I lay awake in bed, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The loneliness crept in, and I would find myself missing the life I thought I had. But the next morning, when I saw Mia and Max, their faces full of excitement and joy, I knew I had to keep pushing forward. For them, a few months passed. The pain didn't magically disappear, but it dulled. The wounds, while still there, began to heal. It wasn't a quick fix, but progress is progress. One evening, while I was sitting at the kitchen table going over some work emails, I received a call that would change things in a way I hadn't expected. It was Sarah. Sarah, a name I hadn't thought about much recently. She was a friend from church, someone I had known for years. She had been there for me when everything fell apart, offering a shoulder to lean on, a listening ear when I needed someone to talk to. We had spoken a few times since the divorce, but that was the extent of it. So when her name popped up on my phone, I wasn't sure what to expect. I answered, my voice a little unsure. "Greg, it's Sarah," she said, her voice warm and comforting as always. "I just wanted to check in and see how you were doing. I know things have been tough, and I've been thinking about you and the kids." Her kindness, the way she always took time to care about others, was something I had come to appreciate more than I realized. As we spoke, I felt a sense of relief in her voice. It wasn't forced like some of the people I had encountered after the divorce. Sarah wasn't just being polite. She genuinely cared. We talked for a while, mostly about the kids, how they were adjusting, and how I was handling everything. It felt good to talk to someone who understood, someone who didn't judge me or my situation. Felt safe. "You know," she said after a pause, "I've been meaning to ask if you wanted to grab a coffee sometime, just to catch up, no strings attached. If you're up for it, of course." The invitation caught me off guard. Sarah had always been kind, but this felt different. There was a part of me that hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was ready for anything more than a friendship. I hadn't even thought about dating again. Not after everything that had happened with Julia. But then I realized, why not? It wasn't as though I had to jump into anything. It was just coffee. Could be a chance to see how things felt, to feel out a new connection. Maybe it was the kind of fresh start I needed. "Yeah," I said, surprised at how natural the words came out. "I'd like that. Let's do it." That simple decision turned into something more. We started meeting up regularly, coffee here, lunch there. Sometimes we'd take a walk in the park, talking about everything and nothing. It was refreshing, not having the weight of expectations hanging over me. Sarah was easy to talk to, and her kindness felt like a balm to the wounds that still lingered. She didn't rush me, didn't pressure me. She was patient, understanding, and above all, genuine. Over time, I started to notice something shift inside me. I hadn't expected to feel this way so soon, but I did. I started to feel alive again. There was a part of me that had been shut off for so long, and with Sarah, it felt like that part was slowly waking up. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. Like the man I had been before everything fell apart. And I realized that man still existed. But it wasn't just about Sarah. It was about me. It was about finding my footing again, reclaiming a sense of purpose, and realizing that I could build a new chapter in my life. I wasn't the same person I had been, but that didn't mean I couldn't be happy again. As we continued to spend time together, I started to think about what the future might look like. It was still too early to say, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't scared anymore. I had my children, and they were thriving. I had Sarah, and though we were taking it slow, I could see something positive growing between us. Life, as I had learned, kept moving forward. Julia, on the other hand, had moved on too. But I wasn't worried about her anymore. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. I had my life, my children, and my future ahead of me. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving towards something, rather than just surviving. And with Sarah by my side, I knew I was ready to embrace whatever came next. What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts, reflections, or even critiques in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be the first to catch the next chapter of this story. I can't wait to share what comes next. Thank you for listening to this journey, and I hope it resonated with you. Until next time,